All right, folks, if you can gather around, come on down to this room, our second to last room. We are at the tail end of what has been a long day for you all. I realize, getting up here when it was the crack of dawn and you're going to be leaving in the dark of night. But you signed up for the extensive tour, and hopefully you feel like you've gotten your money's worth. That would be $0, by the way, is what you spent on this tour. But in any event, today we're going to look at another, what I'll call, conglomerate room. Most of the rooms, as we've said, have been focused on, well, all of them have been focused on certain aspects of faith as action. The last room that you just left and the room we're in right now do that by looking at multiple examples rather than individual examples like the majority of our rooms have done so far. As I told you an hour ago in the last room, I'm going to tell you now, come to the final room. I know at this point you're all tempted, and some of you might be hungry and wanting to have dinner and whatever else. Just fight the urge. The last room is going to be a particularly great room. We have a docent on staff who has something unique to share as it relates to that last room. In fact, I learned during that 10-minute break while you all were visiting the last room, I realized, oh my gosh, she's not even on schedule today, so I called. She's great. She's just going to come in. Won't be in the garb that the rest of us have in the museum, but it'll be a great way to end your tour. I promise. Please come. But we're in this room right now, and this room is focused on serving selflessly. It has the same inscription as we read in the last room, but let's go ahead and read it again to orient ourselves. Can somebody read the inscription? It's on the east wall. It's also found in Hebrews 11, verses 32 through 34. Can somebody be our volunteer and make it known so we can get a microphone over to you? All right, looks like Patrick over there has volunteered. Thank you, good sir. Hebrews 11, 32 through 34.
34.
Yes, please.
And what shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and of Barak and of Samson and Jephthah, of David also and Samuel and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, and stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, and waxed valiant in fight. Turn to flight the armies of the aliens.
Wonderful. Thank you, good sir. Okay, so again, familiar inscription. We heard it last room. Last room we focused on, amidst the individuals called out, we focused on Gideon, and specifically on how Gideon's life story demonstrated glorifying God. And we walked about, we talked through his, what seemed struggles initially, his reluctance and need of more assurance than maybe we felt would have been appropriate, but God tolerated it. This room is focusing on, as I said a moment ago, faith that serves selflessly, and among the others that are depicted here, we're going to focus on David. Pre-King David, specifically. I'll give you a word of warning. We have an exhibit that is the cabinet. It's kind of shielded from your view. You'll get a full view of it if you walk in there during your 10-minute break. It's a little on the gory side. The exhibit to King David, we've got some weaponry, and we also have a trophy, if you will, from the battle, a famous battle that you're familiar with, a large head. But with that, let's go ahead and read the backstory of David. Go to 1 Samuel chapter 17 is where I want you all to land, please. Again, this is a very familiar passage. Surely all of you know it and know it decently well. I want to look at it from a slightly different lens. We're going to read this in sections, kind of dissect the passage, and focus again on the issue of faith that's called out in this room. Can I get one volunteer to read verses 1 through 7 of 1 Samuel 17? Show me who you are, Mr. and Ms. Volunteer, so we can have the microphone come hither. All right, 1 Samuel 17, verses 1 through 7. Go ahead, Leslie.
Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Soka, which belongs to Judah, and encamped between Soka and Azekah in Ephes them in. And Saul and the men of
You
Israel
volunteered there, Leslie. so
were
you're
gathered
second.
and encamped in the valley of Elah and drew up in line of battle against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with a valley between them. And there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and his shield bearer went before him.
All right, very good. So Leslie read from a different dialect than most of you have. You probably don't know the conversion rates from shekel to feet, or from, what was the other unit you just had? Sorry, cubit to feet and shekels to pounds. So my dialect talked about him being 9 feet 9 inches tall, that the coat of armor, the coat of mail, was 125 pounds, and the tip of his spear was 15 pounds. So, with that said, what have we learned about Goliath in this passage thus far? He's a big guy. All right, yeah, we got that. He's huge, he's big. What else? There's other things that we glean from this passage, or at least one other significant thing. A champion, yes. The well-armored part, but as a champion, my dialect said champion. I forget what Leslie said, but basically he's a warrior. I mean, that's his deal. And he's built to fit the part, as it turns out. So he's this massive dude, and he does army work, he does battle, and he does it well. He's a champion, not just a soldier, but a champion soldier. So he's a very experienced fellow, and so at this point, the scales look like they're tipped in the direction of the Philistines and not the Israelites. They propose an interesting, I think, very efficient manner of resolving this impasse. So if I can get somebody else to read the next 2 verses, verses 8 and 9, same chapter, 1 Samuel 17, 8 and 9. Yes, Tessie, thank you.
Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us."
Okay, very good. And I know some of you that have mentioned VeggieTales. This is a pretty humorous VeggieTale depiction. Our champion fights your champion. All right. So what is the gist of this battle plan? This is an interesting battle plan.
If I win, you're our servants, and if you win, we're your servants.
Okay, yes, and the battle's going to be specifically between 2 people. I mean, that's interesting. You got, I don't know how many thousands of Philistines there are and how many thousands of Israelites, and then they kind of devise this, you know what, let's not come down here and slaughter each other and you just waylace to people. How about you pick a guy, we'll pick a guy. They duke it out, and the one standing, that team wins, and the rest of you are subject. I mean, I think it's brilliant, frankly. I think the Philistines thought it was brilliant, too, because they had a guy like Goliath as the guy they could parade out there, and then the Jews did not. So this is the proposition, and what is delaying this battle moving forward?
Nobody wants to fight.
Yeah, scared out of their minds, and we're going to see that. So again, this made sense, sure enough, and then they bring out this guy that's 9 feet tall and is wearing things 125 pounds, and they're like, ooh, okay, this is a little different scenario.
Yeah.
Basically a tank.
Yeah, he is. That's a Sherman tank versus, a dude, flesh and bones. All right, resuming the narrative, if I can get another reader. I know I'm making Mark, the camera guy, move around a lot, but if we can have somebody else to read verses 10 and 11, and then 16. Okay. Sharon, go for
The
it.
Philistine said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid.
Great, and then 16.
For 40 days the Philistines came forward and took his stand morning and evening.
All right, so this proposal was made, continually made for 40 days. Why it's continually made is it's not been accepted, not been rejected, but it hasn't been accepted either. And for some reason, the Philistines are content to just sort of sit here and see what happens rather than just go across the valley and attack. So we know, I think, what happens here in short order. This guy David, whom we're focusing on, gets dispatched to the battlefield. Do you recall why?
Food?
Yeah, so he's got a boatload of brothers, and we learned that previously in the narrative, and we'll get to that later on. And Dad is concerned that, how my boys doing? Maybe they're hungry. Hey, youngster, David's the one left at the home. He's the youngest of them all, and Dad loads up. Youngster with some victuals, go to the battlefield, check on your brothers, give them this food. Daddy loves them, whatever. All right. So he does as much. In fact, I will give you all a break. Let me read the next couple of passages, verses 20 through 24. So David got up early in the morning, left the flock with someone to keep it loaded up, and set out as Jesse, Dad, had instructed him. David, arrived at the perimeter of the camp as the army was marching out to its battle formation, shouting their battle cry. So I guess every morning, they show up in mass and they sit there and see who blinks first, and then they leave when nobody blinks. 21, Israel and the Philistines lined up in battle formation facing each other. David left his supplies in the care of the quartermaster and ran to the battle line. When he arrived, he asked his brothers how they were. Again, this was the assignment. Check on your brothers, bring them some food. So David's doing what Dad told him to do. When he was speaking with them, suddenly the champion named Goliath, the Philistine from Gath, came forward from the battle line and shouted his usual words, which David heard. When all the Israelite men saw Goliath, they retreated from him terrified. All right, so we have Groundhog Day happening. Every day they show up, every day they hear this scary dude, every day they scurry back, wake up the next day and repeat. And David happens to be there at this last moment, and he sees and he hears this, because Dad has dispatched him not to be an aid to, anything that's going on other than check on your brothers, give them, the muffins that we made here at the house for them. All right. So David hears this, and we understand that David, hopefully, responds in a way that's quite memorable. I will have another reader, please. Verses 31 through 37, 1 Samuel 17. Show me who the volunteers. All right, yes, sir, Lee.
Through 37?
31 through 37, yes.
Okay. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go down against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by the hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine."
All right, one last sentence, I think.
Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord will be with you."
All right, very good. So we hear a little bit of David's credentials, but let's compare the two. If indeed this is going to be the battle, this is the one Philistine chosen, and this is the one Jew chosen to do this battle as a proxy for the armies. Let's compare and contrast them. We've learned a few things. Go ahead. Somebody tell me about one of the differences you see between the two.
Size.
All right, size. So you got a huge guy versus a presumably regular sized guy. Maybe even on the smaller side, because he's the younger of the one. Maybe he's still in his adolescent years. What else?
One is armed.
Say that again?
The one is armed.
Okay, yeah, and we're going to get to that in a little bit, but ultimately when this battle line is drawn, we have the large dude has the normal garb and the normal weaponry, and the regular-sized dude does not. What? Oh, okay. So David has perhaps the deal breaker that Goliath hath not. Very good. What else? Reputation. Yeah, they don't know who David is. I mean, Saul's like, who are you? I mean, the brothers know, and they're kind of perturbed that little brother's showing up and sticking his nose in things, but the rest of the folks don't know who David is. I mean, he's a shepherd. Shepherds were an important player in the economy of that era, but that was kind of the low man on the totem pole kind of job. That's for the youngster or the slave or the whatever else. So it's not like he's making a name for himself watching sheep. Nobody knows who he is. Everybody knows who Goliath is.
He's also attended. He has that, the way he says, who is this that has spoken against our hero?
And I love the, excellent, yes. And I love the word that he used in part of the description, this uncircumcised Philistine. That's like, I was like, I'm going to get this. Who is this dude? He's just not only big and whatever, but he's an uncircumcised. He's filthy. All right, so David certainly reacts in a way that none of his Israelite counterparts have reacted. They're ready to hightail it to the tent, and he's ready to step forward. What else? Training, okay. So tell us more about the training issue.
So it says since birth, I think that Goliath had been, he'd been trained.
Yeah, so he's sucking thumbs and swinging swords at the same time. He was a little guy, and
I don't think he's been trained to kill a lion, although he knows how to kill one.
yes.
Learn as you go.
There you go. Yeah, David had more on-the-job training, and Goliath looks like he was groomed for such things. Very good. Any other thoughts? You guys have done a good job of coming up. All right.
His age as well, it refers to him as a youth. And he had, Goliath had said, get me a man to fight me, and this little young kid comes.
Perfect. Yeah, and Goliath's reaction is the same. Once he sees, like, you're sending out a chump, a little kid. All right. Yes, so great. You guys have hit a lot of the comparisons and contrasts between the two. David does tell Saul, that he does have meaningful experience. Because Saul basically says, yes, Stephen.
But he had already been anointed.
Yes, David knows that. David, and that's a great part, and I wish you hold on to that thought, because we're going to circle back to that in a little bit. That was a little spoiler alert there that Stephen shared. But, so David knows that. And perhaps that's part of why David's responding the way he does. Nobody else knows that. Again, this is just a youngster that's out keeping sheep, didn't even go to the army because he wasn't qualified, perhaps because of age, perhaps because dad wants to have somebody here watching the sheep. So we get these distinct differences, and as David is laying out his case to Saul, talking about, I might not have been trained as a warrior, and you don't know who I am, but some lions do, and some bears do, and their carcasses are over there if you want to kind of, verify my resume. So he does have some experience. I think one of the things that, I won't attribute this to you, one of the things that I overlooked is the sentence that I insisted Lee read at the end. Saul basically agrees to let David be their warrior. And we kind of fly past that and get to the story, and it was a magnificent story. But if indeed the battle plan is mano a mano, the guy standing is the winner, Saul has got, thousands of people that are with him, men versus boys, guys that can wear and do wear battle armor and all that, and they've been battle tested to some extent, more so than this strange teenage kid that shows up. And yet Saul agrees to let David represent Israel. And I have the same question that I just saw Lee mouth. Why would he do that? Because for 40 days, they haven't had someone they wanted to bring forward. So now you have a volunteer. But if I'm the king and I'm saying this is my volunteer, I might think, let's sit on that a little bit. Let's see if somebody else, has the courage, or somebody else shows up to bring muffins for so-and-so. And I don't know that I want this guy to be the guy. But Saul agrees to it. So why do you think that is? That's a question that's big. Why would Saul say, yes, okay, David, you killed some bears, I don't know who you are, and you're clearly young, but okay, you're going to be on your shoulders is the fate of our nation as it relates to this battle. Why would Saul agree to that?
40 days.
Okay.
I think that's part of it, is that it's been 40 days, and nobody else has come before.
Yeah. Nobody else, including Saul, by the way. I mean, he wasn't as giant as Goliath, but one of the reasons why Saul was kind of heralded is because he's a taller dude. So he's like 6'5", everybody else is 5'10". I don't know. So he's big enough, and he had some warrior experience. So he could have been the one. He didn't want to volunteer himself. Nobody else volunteered. Maybe after 40 days, he's like, something's got to give.
If I was a regular bad dude looking at that, I don't think I would step up. So
Of course.
And that's an army of people that are refusing to do that. So if somebody's going to step up, he's going to, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's impressed that this guy has courage. But again, if he's weighing the cost analysis, he might think, yes, thanks for having a volunteer. Finally, on day 40, I got somebody stepping forward, but do I want to trust our battle to this guy? And he does, and there's great reasons. I saw a hand, and I saw a hand. You first.
Well, like I said, he's weighing the future history of Israel against this one guy, one thing, and then.
And can I pause right there? Even more selfishly, he's weighing his kingship with this one guy. So it's not just Israel. It's like, I'm the guy in charge, and the thing falls on its face. I'm the one that looks bad or whatever. Go ahead.
The Holy Spirit, God has not left him yet.
Great answer.
So I think somebody's is whispering in his ear, pick this guy because I'm going to be with him, no problem.
Excellent. Great thoughts. You had your hand over here.
I was thinking maybe it was kind of something of an honor badge for him, where people in the future, let's say David didn't succeed, and then I allowed my son to be sacrificed to go out, and maybe people would revere him more.
Okay. I mean, David wasn't the son of Saul, but
Saying go, meaning telling him it's okay to go.
okay. Yeah, maybe in a selfish way, he thought this makes me look good, even though there's a huge risk. Excellent. Stoney.
I'm just thinking because, chapter 16, 14, the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul. So it's tormenting him. So I think the Spirit God is here is the main thing that I see. I think maybe that's the reason why he knows God chose him. Yep. 16, 14.
Excellent. Great. So yeah, I promise we're going to get back to 16, you guys. Good insight. So we don't know the story doesn't tell us. It just says that he relents. And later on, it says that Saul, and we're going to, in the interest of time, we'll kind of skip through that. It says that Saul gives him his battle garb and gives him his sword, and David tries it on. It's way too clunky, and frankly, it's built for a 6-foot-something guy, and David's presumably a 5-foot-something kid, and just, it's just not even feasible, let alone functional for him. Yes, sir.
You might have the same plan that the Philistines apparently had. They said we're going to do this. They said we're going to do this. It happened. Hey, we'll send David. That doesn't work out.
Yeah, sure, we'll do that. We'll send our guy out there. So perhaps all along he's thinking, if it works, I'm a hero. If it doesn't work, we got speedy people. We've been running back to our tents for 40 days, and I can see these guys are quick, so maybe we can make a break for it and escape the Philistines. Sir.
As somebody over there said, the Holy Spirit might have nudged Saul. We know that David, he played the harp and everything, the evil spirit left.
Yeah, I was wrong.
I don't know if Saul had the Spirit back on him, but God works in amazing ways. But David, you can see in his confidence that he knows that the Lord is going to allow him to do this.
Perfect.
He knows.
He does.
Times in your life where you move by faith and you know that you're doing what the Lord wants you to do.
Agreed.
And he doesn't credit it to himself.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Perfect point. So whether Saul is just tired of waiting, whether Saul is impressed by the courage of this one fellow, whether Saul sees in David a spirit-fueled courage, whether Saul has been nudged by the Holy Spirit, even though he's not taking residence in Saul so much anymore, he's still an influence, and maybe he kicks Saul in the butt and says, let this guy do it, get out of the way. We don't know exactly what fueled Saul's ultimate agreement. Maybe he was, counting on a plan B of just running faster than the Philistines if things don't work out. But he says yes, and he allows David to go forward, and David does clearly have a lot of spirit confidence in him, and he does attribute it accordingly, as Patrick said. In fact, let's go ahead and read those passages. Can I get maybe two people, because this is a longer passage. We're going to read from 41 through 51. So if I can get somebody to read 41 through, it's not going to be an even break, I'm sorry, but just trying to find a logical place to stop it. 41 to 47, and then somebody else bring us home, 48 to 51. We see somebody's being volunteered. All right, we'll take this table over here, and then somebody else near this lady, if you could read after she's done. So, ma'am, if you could do 41 to 47, please.
The Philistine came closer and closer to David with the shield bearer in front of him. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he despised him because he was just a youth, healthy and handsome.
All right, pause. So right there. So we heard Leslie made a similar comment. You know, this is like a kid showing up, and Saul's like, not Saul, Goliath's like, are you kidding me? Go ahead.
He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come against me with sticks?" Then he cursed David by his gods. "Come here," the Philistine called to David, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts." David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with a dagger, spear, and sword, but I come against you in the name of Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel's armies. You have defied them. Today the Lord will hand you over to me. Today I'll strike you down, cut your head off, and give the corpses of the Philistine camp to the birds of the sky and the creatures of the earth. Then all the world will know that Israel has a God. And this whole assembly will know that it is not by sword or by spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's. He will hand you over to us."
Bang. All right, so drop the stone there. David is coming out all guns a-blazing in terms of his verbal confidence and attributing the success where it's due. Somebody bring us home. 48 through 51, somebody in that area. Come on, somebody. All right, yes, ma'am.
Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David. David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell on his face to the ground. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone and struck the Philistine and killed him. There was no sword in the hand of David. Then David ran and stood over the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of its sheath and killed him and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled.
Boom. All right. So again, this case here, which is partially shielded to make sure you're looking at it intentionally, has some of the bloodiness of what you just heard. Again, we know the story, and it's a great story, and it's a great story in multiple virtues, but the one that we at the museum wanted to call out from this familiar story is the selflessness of David's service. Because we just spent, the last part of 15, 20 minutes talking about the illogical nature of this young shepherd boy going up against a trained warrior who's as big as he is. It's illogical that Israel would allow this to be the representative of that army. But all that happens because David, admittedly fueled by God, but still has the humanity in him and could very well say, I pass. He's willing to be the guy. He's willing to serve. Obviously, great confidence that God will deliver him, but I think realizing that maybe God has a different plan. He is willing to step up, step on the line, if you will, put his life on the line, if you will, quite selfless in that service. And the result is a heroic, epic battle that we celebrate here. We're going to fast forward a bit to look at the other components in this exhibit hall that focus on David. Before we fast forward, though, we're going to backtrack just a little bit first. So you should be still in 1 Samuel 17. Go back one chapter. Some of you have dipped your toes already in chapter 16. We're going to now go there as a group. We'll be looking specifically at verse 11. I'll set the stage. Samuel is the prophet of the day. Some would argue he's the last judge because he shows up at the end of Judges, and when they say we want to be like all the other nations and have a king, Samuel's the one who tries to dissuade them from that decision. They persist. God relents, allows Samuel to anoint Saul as the first king. Samuel does so, excuse me, begrudgingly, because he doesn't want there to be an earthly king. He doesn't want Israel to replicate the other nations who have kings. They're basically saying, we don't want to be, the oddballs. We want to look like everybody else. And he's done his best to say no. So he has been the instrument of God to anoint the first king, Saul. Didn't take long for Saul to disappoint both Samuel and God. So now Samuel's commissioned to anoint Saul's successor, which means that Saul's successor is not coming from the line of Saul. Normally the successor is the surviving oldest son. Samuel's now being commissioned. There's going to be a new sheriff in town when Saul's gone, and I'm going to send you off to find him. So Samuel goes to Bethlehem, as you hopefully remember, because he's been sent to Jesse's family to anoint Jesse, one of Jesse's sons, and there's a bunch of them. And they're all rugged and handsome, coming from the oldest to the youngest. They're all tall and they're all whatever. And Samuel is impressed with the first one, Eliab, I think, and says, surely this is the guy. And God says, nope. Brother number 2, brother number 3. You finally get to the part where it seems there's no more sons of Jesse, and Samuel's been told none of them are the right one. Verse 11. Can somebody read verses 11 through 13? 1 Samuel 16, 11 through 13. Somebody on this side of the room here. We're going to make Mark travel to that side. All right, we got David, but I will have more opportunities, I promise. Mark, you might want to just kind of hang out over there if you would.
Then Samuel said to Jesse, are all your sons here? And he said, there remains yet the youngest, but behold, he is keeping the sheep. And Samuel said to Jesse, send and get him, for we will not sit down until he comes. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he.
One more.
Then Samuel took the horn of the oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah.
Perfect. Mark, you might want to hang out there because I got a few more readings. I'm going to volunteer that half of the room. All right, so this is an important backstory. It's relevant to perhaps David's courage, what we just read about, and it's more relevant to what we're going to be discussing next as we think about the selflessness of David's service. And we're focusing specifically on his time serving the Lord before he officially became king. He was anointed here. He's a youngster. The passage doesn't indicate that there's much, if any, audience to this encounter. We don't know if he's doing it in the presence of Dad, Jesse, or if he meets David as David's coming in and Samuel goes out and they're just the two of them. We don't know. I think it's safe to presume if anybody else knows, it's only a few folks. He's not known to be the anointed successor to King Saul. That would be like a death sentence. And even despite that, Saul gets some paranoia as it relates to David. So anyhow, this happens as a youngster. It happens before the battle with Goliath. It happens before David becomes of service to Saul, because after he slays Goliath, Saul says, who is this guy? And let's maybe use him. And so Saul brings David into his fold, and not so much as a soldier, but also as a soother of emotions. One of you mentioned that David was proficient at the harp, and Saul was an ornery guy every now and then, and a spirit would torment him, and David would break out and do things like this, and Saul would calm down on a few occasions. Yes, sir?
Can you explain that a little bit better? Because chapter 16 says he's in the service of Saul, playing the harp and doing all that. Then it's chapter 17 where he kills Goliath, and then Saul says,
who is this
guy?
Yeah.
Who's his father?
Yeah, you're right.
How come if you take it in order, he already knows who David is?
And let me take a swing at that, and I'll offer up others. Great point, and you're right. I flipped the story a bit. The question that specifically was asked, and Mick is referencing 17 verse 56. The king said, "Find out whose son this young man is," which is a little different than saying, "Who is this guy?" One of the rewards that was being offered to somebody from the Israelite camp who would say, "You know what, I'm tired of Goliath, I volunteer." One of the inducements to somebody doing that was the king was going to erase tax obligations or something. It was something that had to do with that person's household. I wish I could find it. Maybe one of you who's astute can find it. But there was basically, you won't pay taxes or you won't pay us duty or something of that nature. So the traditional answer to your question, which is a good question, is the king was not confused necessarily as to who this guy was, but wanted to be sure they knew who his father was because the father's household was going to have some kind of benefit. Why did he not know that already? I don't know. Is he absent-minded? Is this not, a year later and he's forgotten who this guy's son is, who's his dad? Good question. Did you have other thoughts?
There's a possibility people say that the chronological order.
That 17 is a bit of a backstory. Right.
Yeah, like you were saying, maybe he found out about Jesse, time had gone by, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. And in fairness, the passage does yield that question, and maybe the answer isn't perfect. So with that caveat, if we can kind of put a caveat there, the basic narrative is David becomes of help to Saul, and he does more than play harps. He does go out to battle on occasion, and he's successful, so much so that David now has, a fan club in the nation of Israel. Remember the little song that he would hear sometimes when they all come back from battle? Can somebody tell me what the lyrics are? All right, yeah. Saul has killed his thousands, David his tens of thousands. All right. So you're the king, and you're like the man in charge, and all of a sudden you're hearing basically the nation adore David. So Saul he's already has what appears, both because the spirit left him and because maybe he has some psychosis on his own, he's volatile emotionally. So he's hearing this and he said, enough. I'm tired of everybody cheering for David. I'm the king. I'm the guy wearing the crown. I'm the one you pay money to. Why are you cheering this guy? So Saul decides, I'm through with David. Twice he tries to spear him as he's playing the harp. Thankfully, David is more nimble than Saul is accurate with the spear, so he doesn't get killed either time. David runs for his life. So now we're getting to the part where David is on the run. Specifically, you should now go forward in your page sequence to chapter 24 of 1 Samuel. All right, can I get a reader in this area to volunteer to read verses 1 through 4 of 1 Samuel chapter 24? And just to explain the exhibit, over here you see kind of a replica of a cage, of a cave, which is what we're going to be seeing here. The story that we're about to read is indicated as having occurred in a structure similar to what you have behind me. Go ahead, sir.
After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pen along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. The men said, This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give you your enemies into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe.
Sorry, can you read that last sentence again, if you would?
I will give you your enemies into your hands for you to deal with them as you wish. Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe.
All right, very good. So we have kind of a kindly English word choice used here, but what's Saul doing in the cave? Just to call it what it is. Come on, somebody say it. He's going to the bathroom. He's been walking around and he's like, I got to the bathroom. So he finds a cave and decides that's as private a place as maybe I'll find. So he goes in the bathroom. Unbeknownst to him, David and his group are in that very same cave. And his group says, you got him. Now's the time. We can stop running from this king. And David goes and he cuts off a fraction of Saul's garment, does nothing else. We'll see why. But he did have a prime opportunity. The guys were accurate in telling him this is, the Lord has given you this blessing. Praise God Almighty, take out your spear and be done with this. All right, we fast forward we're not sure exactly how long, but we're 2 chapters in advance of where we last were. So chapter 26 of 1 Samuel. If I can get somebody else to read, this will be the last volunteer reader, Mark, so you'll not have to wander around so much. Somebody can read a few verses out of chapter 26, specifically verses 7, 8, and then 12. Show me who the volunteer reader is for the last time. Yes, ma'am. Rhonda back there. All right, so 1 Samuel 26, 7 through 8 and 12, please.
David and Abishai went to the army.
I say, hang, pause 1 second. So again, we're not sure what kind of time frame there is, but things have happened between. This is not like the next morning. So Saul, and we'll see kind of what happens, but this is a year later, 2 years later, we're not exactly sure, but fast forward in time. I'm sorry to have done that to you. Go ahead and start again.
So David and Abishai went to the army by night, and there was Saul lying asleep inside the camp with his spear stuck in the ground near his head. Abner and the soldiers were lying around him. Abishai said to David, "Today God has delivered your enemy into your hands. Now let me pin him to the ground with one thrust of my spear. I won't strike him twice."
Thank you. And verse 12.
12. So David took the spear and water jug near Saul's head, and they left. No one saw or knew about it, nor did anyone wake up. They were all sleeping because the Lord had put them into a deep sleep.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. So we have a second opportunity. Again, David's still on the run. Saul's gone home and been nice for a bit. He fought a battle of some sort, and then he decided, let me go hunt David some more. That was a good time. So now he's hunting David again, and David has this opportunity to come upon the camp and to come upon the sleeping king, whose sword or whose spear is right next to him. And again, David's companion says, "Praise the Lord. We can finally end the madness." And David does not allow him to take the spear and slay Saul, nor does David do it himself, but David takes the spear, and David takes the buckets that were near to Saul. And we know that these guys were sound sleepers in part because the Lord made them so. So an interesting dynamic in both of these situations. What we found particularly interesting, and by the way, I meant to tell you, the campsite replica over here in this part of the room is referencing this particular setting. But in both of these situations, God, in fact, did deliver into David's hands King Saul. God allowed these people, including the king, to be such a heavy sleeper that David and his pal can walk around and not a one wakes up and says, "Who are you?" and, kills him or whatever. I mean, Saul is not sleeping in the outskirts of the camp. He is like right in the middle with the periphery of soldiers and presumably watchmen and something, and somehow these two guys can just walk into a camp, walk right up to the king, take his stuff and not kill him. The time before, Saul feels I need to go to the bathroom, and he chooses of all the options this particular cave, and that's the one that David's in. So literally, God has, in fact, delivered twice to David, King Saul. Twice, David has refused the opportunity to put an end to all of this. Why? I'll read some passages. You guys can stay where you are, particularly Mark the camera guy. But I'll read back in chapter 24, verses 6 through 7. David gives this explanation. Actually, the rest of the story. I'll start at verse 5. After David's conscience bothered him because he had cut off the corner of Saul's robe. So he's thinking, I cut the king's robe, and maybe that wasn't such a good idea. He said to his men, "I swear before the Lord, I would never do such a thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed." So even though David was anointed, so was Samuel. And David recognizes, so was Saul. So even though Saul's off his rocker, he's still the Lord's anointed. He is the actual king, and David is not wanting to fast forward. "I will never lift my hand against him, since he is the Lord's anointed." With these words, David persuaded his men, and he did not let him rise against Saul. So later on, I'll read it. We have time. Then Saul left the cave and went to his way. After that, David got up and went out of the cave and called to Saul, "My lord, the king." Imagine that. Saul's, kind of tidying up, and he's walking out of the cave, and all of a sudden behind him is a voice, "Hey!" Oh my gosh, there's someone back there. When Saul looked behind him and David bowed to the ground in homage, David said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words of people who say, 'Look, David intends to harm you'? You can see with your own eyes that the Lord handed you over to me today in the cave. Someone advised me to kill you, but I took pity on you and said, I won't lift my hand against the Lord." So he shows him, says, "Look down at the lower corner of your robe. This is what's missing. My sword cut this off. It could have cut your head off," basically. Saul says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'll leave you alone." And then 2 chapters later, he's on the run again, hunting David. So that's why David did what he did and the explanation he gives to Saul. And then fast forward to chapter 26, a similar narrative. I will read verses 9 through 11 of chapter 26. David said to Abishai, "Don't destroy him, for who can lift a hand against the Lord's anointed and be blameless?" David added, "As the Lord lives, the Lord will certainly strike him down. Either his day will come, or he will die, or he will go into battle and perish. However, because of the Lord, I will never lift my hand against the Lord's anointed. Instead, take the spear and the water jug by his head and let's go." So they did. And again, there's another episode where shortly thereafter, the soldiers wake up, and Saul wakes up and realizes stuff's gone, and David's within shouting distance and says kind of the same thing. "I could have killed you. Yeah, here's your spear, here's your water jug. They were right by your head, but your head is still connected to your body, and it could have very easily not been so." So twice David spares Saul, despite the fact that twice God gave him the opportunity. Why would God have given David the opportunity twice to put an end to this? Thoughts on that? I would say both of these opportunities were God provided. Why would God provide David with these opportunities twice? I agree. I believe even though David had known, because we read before all of this, chapter 16, where David had been anointed by Samuel, David knew, I'm going to be the next king. He also knows Saul's gone mad at this point. And he's an ineffective king, and he's obsessed with me and whatever else. And surely the Lord has left him. The Lord is with me. I slayed Goliath. I'm slaying tens of thousands. Now's my time. God, I think, says, let's see what this young guy, who's not so young anymore, let's see what he does with this opportunity. I will serve King Saul to you in a silver platter. Twice. And twice, pre-King David says, no. I saw a hand over here. Yes, ma'am.
Well, just in 26 verse 10, David says, "As the Lord lives, the Lord will strike him, or his day will come to die, or he will go down into battle and perish."
Yes.
He knew it wasn't he knew the Lord was going to do it, that it wasn't his place to do it.
Exactly. But we've seen in a few of the rooms that we've already toured, particularly Abraham and Sarah, where they were told God is going to do this, and they wait after a while, and God doesn't do it, and they said, maybe he needs our help. Maybe we're going to accelerate things, and we're going to try using my Egyptian slave girl as the proxy wife and whatever else. This museum is full of people who have done that. And they're here, and they're still here as a faith, but they do that. I dare say we do that at times when the Lord, gives us some assurance of something that's going to come, and we want to kind of make it happen now and not wait on the Lord's timing. David here, in his faith that serves selflessly, again, that's the focus of of this room, I should say. David knows his time is to come. I think he clearly knows Saul's on borrowed time, but David is not going to be the one to cash in that chip. David says, as Leslie read, as we all read, David's confident God's going to bring it about, whether it's die of old age, die of illness, die in battle, I don't know, but it's not going to be at my hand. I'm not going to be the one to do this. God did anoint Saul, and I'm going to let the Lord unanoint him, essentially. So I think this is we think in the museum that this part of David's story as it relates to his faith is equally impressive and far less known than the story of his faith as it comes to slaying Goliath. Little kiddos that don't know a thing about the Bible have heard that story, but few know and really kind of ponder the other aspect of David's selfless service and his unwillingness to accelerate God's plans. He's going to wait on the Lord. And if that means succumbing to the kingship of this guy that has been doing his best to kill me, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to I'm not going to fail the test. Twice, God has given me the opportunity to claim the throne because I know it's already mine. I'm going to let God be the one to sort the timing out and not myself. So we think, again, that this is a wonderful aspect of King David. Again, this is pre-King David. This is David waiting to be King David and waiting on God's timing, not his own, even though it seemed God had given him ample opportunity. Let me wrap up here with some parting comments. To recap, from a chronological order, Samuel anoints David as king after David is called in from the worst job on the farm. David agrees to risk his life for the benefit of the people and his God, serving selflessly with more concern over the lives of others than the risk of harm to self. King Saul loses his marbles and attempts to hunt David down to kill him. Twice, David has an opportunity to kill Saul and assume the throne for which he has already been anointed. Instead, he serves selflessly, not wanting to accelerate the timing of his reign, nor desiring harm to the one that God had previously anointed. So with that, I will wrap our time up and give you maybe 12 minutes in this room versus 10. But do come back. Don't go off. I know you're hungry, but come back to the last room. It'll be worth your while. Let me close this in prayer. Lord God, we do thank you for many examples of faith that we have here in the Hebrews 11 Hall of Faith. We thank you for this one of David. We thank you for the chance to look at his life story and these episodes in perhaps a different perspective and see the selflessness of his service, recognizing that you may be calling us to live our active faith in selfless service as well. May we find courage, may we find comfort in David's example, hopefully not needing to be living it out quite the way David did with someone threatening our lives, but may we realize that when you call, we should act, and only when you call. And in the meantime, may we act in faith, awaiting you to lay out the plans in front of us, God. Thank you for this time together. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, see you in 10 minutes, 12 minutes this time, but